Hello everyone, this is my presentation for scientific reasoning class. Today I am going to talk about the astronomy versus astrology. Even though two words astronomy and astrology look very similar, they have major differences. Astronomy is widely accepted as a science that studies objects like planets, stars, galaxies, and other naturally occurring phenomena in the observable universe. On the other hand, astrology is widely accepted as a non-science or pseudoscience. Astrology is trying to predict people's future or their personalities by observing the patterns in the night sky and also the relative motion of the objects in the night sky. In other words, astrology is assuming that humans' life on Earth have a strong correlation with the other objects in the universe that is far away from us. However, history tells us that astrology started way before astronomy. Then the astronomy evolved with the scientific method. But the astrology diverted from a science and became a pseudoscience. In this presentation, I am going to present the difference between astronomy and astrology and why astronomy is a science, as why astrology considered as a non-science. So where all began. Imagine that you are living on this earth 2000 years ago. You don't have internet, no TV, no radio, and no books, not even schools. What would be your thinking about simple things like sunshine and sunrise? Probably you would be confused and amazed. Without anyone controlling, sun comes out every day, then goes back down from the other side of the earth. Night comes and you see beautiful stars. Almost in all civilization, people got interested in understanding, observing the night sky. They saw some stars make patterns and they move across the sky. People in ancient civilizations were very advanced than we would think of. So you can see the figure in the bottom left shows an about 3000 years old observatory built by Mayans. So also figure in the bottom right shows an about 5000 years old structure that people use to track the motion of celestial objects. It was the famous monument in England called Stonehenge. The middle figure is a star chart made by Egyptians about 3500 years ago. So those gives clear evidences that our ancestors spent a lot of time about thinking the objects in the sky and use lots of resources to understand it. Actually, their interest evolved in several different ways. After observing the night sky, they found a use of it. They realized stars can be used in navigation. Two most popular things are the Northern Star and the Southern Cross. Northern Star is a star that always shines on top of the North Pole. For example, sailors would follow that if they want to sail to north. Southern Cross is a group of stars near the South Pole. So the sailors followed the Southern Cross if they want to sail to the south. Our ancestors also observed the correlation between the celestial objects and day-to-day life things. Here are a few examples. They observed some flowers bloomed with the sunrise and shrink with the sunset. They saw there was a clear correlation between sun and flowers. Another example is the ocean water level. The low tides and high tides had a clear correlation with the moon. With the scientific revolution, people started asking questions about the behaviors of the objects in the sky. Instead of become mesmerized about sunrise, they started thinking of why and how sun rises in every morning, why moon changes its phases. The literature I read explained that people's curiosity in looking at correlations between celestial objects and people's behavior turned into astrology. And understanding the motion of celestial objects turn into astronomy. Why astronomy is a science? Why it can be considered as a science? You might remember that during the class we read about Karl Popper's argument about his definition of science. He talks about the criteria of demarcation of science and non-science. He says that the criteria of the scientific status of a theory is its falsifiability, refutability, or testability. That means, according to the Popper, if a theory is falsifiable, it can be considered as a science. Therefore, if astronomy is made out of falsifiable hypotheses, it becomes a science. And if astrology is made out of non-falsifiable hypotheses, it becomes a pseudoscience. The figure in the right graphically shows the scientific method that we use today. In the next 2 slides, I will give you 2 examples on how an astronomy hypothesis can be proved using scientific method and philosophically. In other words, let me show you how astronomy is built by falsifiable hypothesis. This is only 2 examples. Astronomers always use experiments to test their hypothesis and document them clearly. Before any hypothesis become a theory, it will be tested by many astronomers in many different ways, which satisfy the repeatability. Let's talk about the first example. The hypothesis to be tested is Earth rotates around the Sun instead of Sun rotates around the Earth. A simple experiment we can do is observe the constellations we see at night. We can do this experiment for 2 years. You will see that every night constellations shifts a little bit. Constellation you see at the middle of the sky today will be in your horizon after 3 months, and eventually it will disappear. The same constellation comes back to the middle of the sky after 1 year. That says at night we see different parts of the sky, and after 1 year we see the same part of the sky. Logically, that says the Earth is rotating around the Sun. So that means this is a falsifiable hypothesis. Before go to the next slide, let me introduce the word zodiac. What is the meaning of zodiac? The left hand side figure shows that the sun is at the center and earth rotates around the sun. At night we see the sky that is opposite side of the sun. Then throughout the year we see different constellations. After 1 year we come to the exactly same place. Therefore we see the same constellations after 1 year. The group of constellations that goes through the center of the night sky is called the zodiac. In astronomy, it is just a group of stars that has no physical meaning. However, astrology constellations in the zodiac have meaning that are relevant to the life on Earth. These constellations are also called as the astrological signs. I will come back to that in slide 9 and 10. So let's go to the second example. So my second astronomy hypothesis is the plane that moon rotates around the earth is inclined from the plane that earth rotates around the sun. Let's say that they rotate in the same plane. If that is the case, the earth should come between sun and moon in every orbit, which is 28 days. This is called a lunar eclipse. You can see the lunar eclipse in the right side figure. Therefore, if the two rotation planes are the same, we should see a lunar eclipse in every 28 days. At the same time, moon also should come between the sun and earth in every 28 days. This creates a solar eclipse. If the two planes are the same, we should see a solar eclipse in every 28 days. We know that this does not happen. You might remember that few months ago USA experienced a full solar eclipse. It happens very rare. That means the planet that moon rotates around the earth is not the same plane that the earth rotates around the sun. There is an angle between two planes. Modern astronomers were able to measure this angle. They were able to tell the exact time and the place that the solar eclipse would be visible. This is a perfect example for the falsifiability. Millions of people observed the solar eclipse and they found the predictions made by scientists were perfectly right. This is only two simple examples to show you that astronomy is made out of falsifiable hypotheses. Entire astronomy is made out of falsifiable hypotheses. So let's take a look at astrology side. Before move on, let's watch a comic video about astrology.
That's probably enough about us. Tell us about you.
Me? Okay. I'm a Sagittarius, which probably tells you way more than you need to know.
Yes, it tells us that you participate in the mass cultural delusion that the sun's apparent position relative to arbitrarily defined constellations at the time of your birth somehow affects your personality.
Participate in the what?
I think what Sheldon's trying to say is that Sagittarius wouldn't have been our first guess.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people think I'm a water sign. Okay, let's see what...
As I have mentioned before, astrology is based on the observed correlation. Here is a simple example, simple correlation. One could observe that morning glory flowers bloom with the sunrise and shrink with sunset. This is actually a falsifiable hypothesis. One could observe this for many years and prove that this really happens. It has the repeatability and falsifiability. Also, this can be proved according to the scientific method. This is the 24-hour cycles. So but in astrology, they are using cycles with larger periods. Astrology is a more complicated way of looking at correlations. They noticed the fact that constellations in the night sky are moving and the same constellations are coming back to the same position in exactly 1 year. Also, they noticed that the constellations visible at a given time also depends in the place you are at. That means at a certain time, at a certain place, there is a unique set of constellations in the night sky. Your astrological sign is the constellation that align with your birthplace, Earth and the Sun at the birth time. For thousands of years, astrologers observed the correlation between these alignments and the lifetime events of the person born with the alignment. Then they came up with a correlation. So these are 12 astrological signs that astrologers define. Astrological signs map to different personalities of the people who have born with those signs. For example, the girl in the video I played said she is Sagittarius. According to astrology, people born in Sagittarius are generous, idealistic, have a great sense of humor, and their weaknesses are promises more than they can deliver, and very impatient. They will say anything no matter how undiplomatic. Also, people born with Sagittarius like freedom, travel, they like philosophy, and they like being outdoors. You might argue with me that astrology is beyond your astrological sign. Yes, it is true. Astrologers look for other alignments too, such as the alignment of the planets with constellations. I'm going to give you a simple example of the correlation between personalities and the astrological sign. What you see here is a mathematical way to represent the correlation between the astrological signs and the personalities. For the simplicity, let's consider 5 astrological signs. Astrologers assign different personalities for these signs. Here my hypothesis is you can predict the personality using the astrological sign. You could do an experiment to test this hypothesis. You could talk to people born with these astrological signs and find their personalities. If you find that there is an unique personality for each astrological sign, that means you are able to test your hypothesis. In other words, you came up with the falsifiable hypothesis. If this is the case, astrology becomes a science. However, the case is not like this. You can see in the graph, in practice, people born with the same personality have different personalities. Astrology does not have reasons to explain it. It is just a chance or the probability. Therefore, this hypothesis is not falsifiable. That means astrology is not a science. It is made out of non-falsifiable hypothesis that has never proved. Could astrology ever become a science? I think the answer is yes, philosophically. If astrologers become with a set of falsifiable hypotheses and prove them with experiments, astrology could become a science. However, scientists would need beyond just a set of proved hypotheses. Scientists always think about why it happens. After considering all of these facts, I conclude that astronomy is made out of falsifiable hypotheses that has been tested multiple times by multiple people. Therefore, it is a science. On the other hand, astrology is made out of non-falsifiable hypotheses, and we can argue it is a non-science or pseudoscience.